Hello and welcome to this video on absinthe. This is historically also known as the Green Fairy due to its somewhat unique and purported unusual psychedelic effects. Absinthe is a very obviously green alcoholic beverage, although there are variants that come in different colours, primarily clear. It has a very strong anise flavour. The unusual effects in this are caused by the use of wormwood, which is also botanically known as Artemisia absinthium. Both of these are historically considered culinary and medicinal herbs. Unlike other common examples of strong alcoholic beverages, it is not a liqueur. It has no added sugar while it is in the bottle, but it is added in some serving methods. This makes absinthe a spirit and not a liqueur. As far as records show, absinthe began in the Neuchâtel part of Switzerland in the 18th century, but it rose to infamy in other parts and other countries. Primarily Paris, but other locations had influential consumers, such as Hemingway, Poe, Toulouse-Lautrec, Byron, and Wilde. These were all people known for their eccentricities. The original preparation was made as an all-purpose remedy. This is one way many drinks and foods found their way into common usage. There is, however, a direct line of production from 1805 to 1915 in one French production facility, and it provides some evidence of where it came from and the change over time. The combination of users and association with Bohemian culture, the psychedelic effects, and rising conservatism that opposed alcohol led to absinthe being banned in a number of nations. This included France, Netherlands, Belgium, America, and others in 1915. Given the Netherlands' surprising amount of tolerance to the use of various drugs, the fact that it was banned is quite surprising. Most countries have no strict legal definition for absinthe. This is compared to other spirits like whiskey. Producers of absinthe will use one of two processes, and this will create what we call absinthe, one being distillation and the other cold mixing. The traditional method uses distillation, and this is a sign of a better quality absinthe. Distilled absinthe uses a production that is very reminiscent of other more mildly flavoured spirits like gin. Botanicals are initially added to an alcohol. Generally this is a distilled alcohol like vodka or even grape spirits. This is infused with the aromatic and botanical components, which are then distilled again to create the absinthe-like product that you might be familiar with initially. This, however, has a lot more bitter elements to it, and these aren't necessarily wanted. Distilling removes them and creates something more balanced and desirable. By distilling it several times, you are left with something that is about 72% alcohol by volume. That's because you rely on the use of either a pot still or an alembic still. This means that you have a very strong distillate. From here, it comes out relatively colourless, and you can then colour it using either natural colourings, or it can be made through artificial colouring, again indicative of quality and style of creation. Traditionally, the green colour will come from chlorophyll from herbs that are used in the creation of this. That's a two-step process, the first being that traditionally you have your initial extraction and distillation that produces something with a bitter flavour. From this, you add your other herbs, primarily the wormwood, and this adds chlorophyll. That chlorophyll gives it the colour. This is then distilled again, generally using a pot still, and that leaves it with the green colour, flavours, and far less of those bitter flavours. There is a certain amount of hierarchy within absinthe production. The More refined products are generally considered to be made from white grape spirits, otherwise known as eau de vie. The lower quality is generally made from alcohols derived from grains, beets, or potatoes, essentially vodka. Then there are the cold versions. This is fundamentally just vodka that has all of the herbs put into it, and it infuses, just like making vanilla essence. The most important herbal flavorings to be added are your wormwood, anise, and fennel. Historically, because of the wide time frame in which absinthe has been made through to the modern day, it could be anywhere between 45 to 74% alcohol by volume. Depending on where you are in the world, and to a somewhat greater extent whether absinthe has been imported or produced domestically, you'll find that many tend to veer towards the lower end of the alcohol by volume measure if it's made domestically. If it's imported, for example places like Czechoslovakia, it tends to have a higher alcohol by volume. One defining feature of the different kinds of absinthe available is the stability of the coloration. Generally speaking, artificially coloured absinthe tends to be in a clear glass bottle, and this is because the flavours, colours, and so on don't get affected by light, heat, or exposure as much. It should stay green permanently. Naturally coloured absinthe, on the other hand, is made from chlorophyll, and chlorophyll, when exposed to sunlight, or for that matter, most light or temperature, will turn into a brownish colour over time. This means that naturally coloured absinthe will change its appearance. Artificially coloured absinthe will not. Absinthe's popularity, apart from the sense of illicitness that it has, also comes somewhat from the way that it's prepared and served. There's a semi-ritualistic manner to it, and it's unusual compared to most other spirits. The traditional French approach involves using a specially made spoon. On this spoon, you either add sugar or, more often, a cube of sugar. This then has absinthe poured over it, followed by cold water at a ratio of approximately 1:3. This creates a somewhat sweeter absinthe solution that's been diluted with the water. Now we can get to the details about how psychedelic absinthe really is. There's one major ingredient in it, and it's derived from the wormwood called thuone. This was identified very early on in the life of absinthe, and its effects have been studied to a degree since. It is a GABA antagonist. That means it interferes with neurons and their receptors for various signals, GABA being one of the most common and important neurosignals in the brain. However, although it interferes with them, it doesn't seem to cause hallucinations, as some have said. Instead, it can cause muscle spasms and similar. It does take quite a bit of this, and it's important to be aware of that. You may need concentrations of up to 260 milligrams a kilogram in absinthe. That's a lot, and it's a lot because many countries place a hard upper limit on thuone concentrations at about 30 milligrams per kilogram of absinthe. This means even when you make it using historical techniques, you have a relatively small amount of this present, enough so that consuming it on at least an irregular basis is unlikely to lead to significant harm. Long-term abuse of alcohol can explain many of the other effects that are attributed to absinthe, particularly when we talk about impact to the liver and how this can have carry on effects to other organs. Absinthe relies heavily on herbal flavours in preparation when serving to create a balanced flavour and certainly make it a more palatable beverage. You don't want to be drinking something that tastes like medicine all the time. Most individuals have a preference away from that. Unlike whiskey and other spirits, it is rarely consumed neat for that reason. At the same time, there is, to a considerable degree, much more variance in how it's made, simply because, compared to whiskey, the regulations around it are much more relaxed and loose. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, but at the same time, it does make it hard to know what is made traditionally, what is a premium product, and what is a very cheap and nasty product. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it interesting, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. Please post any comments, questions, or suggestions you have below.